Hi everyone, we're back with another episode of our mini series, The Pillars of Wellness, and today we're going to be talking about nutrition. Just to give you a little recap, I'm Ashley Kurnow, a registered dietitian at Carr Chiropractic, and we also have Dr. Wayne Carr, a doctor of chiropractic at Carr Chiropractic, with us today as well.
So we've talked a little before about functional medicine, and we just want to remind you that functional medicine is not different healthcare. It's not anything that's really different than regular medicine, except for we look at things maybe through a different lens. And we work with both types of healthcare just to come up with what is the root cause of the problem and try to figure out exactly what we can do to address that root cause. And we've talked about the five pillars of health that we're talking on. We've done the sleep, relationships, stress management, and today we're going to do nutrition. And then shortly we'll release our video on movement.
Okay, so nutrition is a key pillar for us, maybe one of the most important pillars. And the big thing with nutrition is to constantly be reminding yourself that the food at the end of your fork is either going to heal you or hurt you. So if the food isn't making you better, it's probably doing something to harm you. Maybe that's not an immediate response, but in the long run, that will add up to some harm on our health. And commonly with nutrition, we're thinking about it only in a matter of losing weight and eating less. But we don't want to focus on eating less food. We want to eat more of the foods that we need. Food provides us with important macro and micronutrients, so big compounds and small compounds that are essential for our overall health and wellness. In order to achieve getting all of the important things in our diet, especially the small little vitamins and minerals, we need to make sure that we're increasing the color in our diet. That being through the forms of fruits, vegetables, and grains, not necessarily through things that are dyed that color. With our macronutrients, one of the big ones is protein, and we need to make sure that we're getting adequate protein. A good guideline is zero point 0.8 to 1 grams of protein per pound of your ideal body weight. So an easy thing to do is to calculate what the ideal body weight is for somebody based off of your height, and then you can figure out from there how much protein you need.
So Ashley, with the protein, is this something that, I remember when we talked before, it was much less protein in the diet. Is this something that has changed where we're recommending more protein than we have in the past?
I certainly think you're seeing where standards are recommending higher amounts of protein because we're seeing that it's important to help build muscle. There are certain conditions where you don't want to have as much protein, but for the average American, that with the things that we're working on, typically we want to be having a little more protein than what the typical standards have recommended.
Thank you.
Another one of our macronutrients. So we had protein. The next macronutrient is fat. Fat gets a bad rap just because the word fat has always been kind of demonized, but fats are just another component of nutrition that we need to have. We just want to make sure we're getting good quality fats. And those are going to come through the sources of omega 3s. So you're going to get those through healthy fatty fish, nuts, seeds, olives, avocados. So not only are there whole foods of this, but the oil source of that as well, like an olive oil as opposed to just eating olives, or an avocado oil as opposed to just eating avocados.
So you're saying, Ashley, that fats aren't necessarily bad for us.
Correct. Fats are not bad. Fats are really important for our brain health. Our brain requires a large amount of fats to function. Our brain is comprised of a lot of fat, so we need to make sure we're getting the good fats. And then I don't believe I have a slide in here, but just so that we don't forget it, carbohydrates is your third macronutrient, and carbohydrates are going to be through the forms of fruits, some vegetables, and grains. And that's another one that typically you see people trying to lower carbs, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. We just eat a lot of carbs as an American society, but quality complex carbohydrates are still important for blood sugar management as well. Hydration is also a huge key. We want to make sure not only that we're getting enough water, but that we're also getting electrolytes in that water as well. So a good guideline is to aim for half your body weight in ounces. If somebody weighs 100 pounds, then 50 ounces is what is recommended for them at minimum. Of course, if we're exercising, we're sweating, we're excreting that, and we need to replenish that. But then we want to make sure we're adding electrolytes in so that we can optimize that. If you're just drinking large amounts of water throughout the day and your urine becomes clear, that isn't necessarily telling us that you're hydrated. You could be maybe flushing some things out. So the electrolytes are important. And then we have a body composition machine here. So it weighs you, measures your muscle mass, body fat mass, but it also does look to see what your fluid levels are to assess if not only are we hydrated, but is the fluid where it should be. So for instance, some people can carry a lot of fluid on their body, but they're very swollen. They have something called edema. That does not mean that we're well hydrated. So it's good to assess those levels.
So with that body composition, it's $25 for a body composition. You can come in and do that whenever. It's a great report to tell you what your muscle mass is, what your body fat is, what, as Ashley said, your water content. Very good thing to do before you start a program. But if you're in a program, the best time is today, not 10 days from now. So get in here and do that, and it's only $25.
And then diet has a huge impact on our microbiome, maybe one of the biggest impacts on our microbiome. The foods that we feed ourselves are going to help feed all of the good microbes in our gut. Also, if we feed our bodies poor foods like candies and snacky foods, that's going to feed those bacteria, and then that bacteria is going to send signals to our brain to want more of that. So not only do we want to make sure we're feeding our bodies the right foods for a good microbiome, a healthy microbiome, we also want to make sure that we're giving it the food so that it sends our brains the right signals to crave the right foods. The Western diet, or the standard American diet, the diet that most people are eating around here, really, really limits or doesn't even benefit the microbiome. So foods that benefit the microbiome are things like fibers, your fruits, your vegetables, grains, basically plants. Anything that grows is going to have a good benefit to the microbiome. And that means growing and then not processing it, because certainly chips essentially did come from the ground at some time, but they were modified and processed a lot to get that way. So the more fibers that we can eat, the more that's going to feed our microbiome. And then that's going to help our immune system. It's going to help our appetite. It's going to help our GI system. It's going to help about every system in our body if we have a healthy gut ecosystem. This is the updated food pyramid, so it's changed quite a bit. The USDA guidelines get adjusted every 4 years. That doesn't mean that they make substantial adjustments every 4 years. That's just sometimes when it's revisited. And so this is flipped a lot from what the previous guidelines were. And the biggest things that you see that changed, which are going to be positive changes for the microbiome, is it's pushing a larger content of fruits and vegetables. It is pushing a higher content of protein and fats, and then it's reduced how many carbohydrates that are recommended. Previously, if you remember what the My Plate looked like, it was encouraging that a quarter of your plate is carbohydrates, but that can be sometimes a little bit too high for some people, and we don't recognize what always falls into that category. So by this saying just to have a small amount of whole grains, it makes it a little bit easier for us to understand that. But the biggest things is more fruits and vegetables and more protein and fats are going to be good changes.
So Ashley, before we move on to this slide, what is the best diet? Somebody comes up and says, "Hey, Ashley, what's the best diet for me? What's the best food plan for me?"
So I think the important words you said is you said for me, and there is no one size fits all in regards to nutrition and diet. So every single person that comes in here is going to have some different modifications and some different dietary changes to fit them best. There isn't one perfect diet. So some people may respond really, really well to a ketogenic diet, while others may respond very, very poorly. Some people may feel that they respond very well to a Mediterranean diet, and some people may just respond better to if they focus simply on getting more whole foods in. So I think that the best diet for each person is the diet where they feel the best on, their health is most optimized, and they can maintain it very consistently day in and day out without feeling restricted.
Yeah, big key word you said there was maintaining too. And it's interesting, with the carnivore diet, which we hear a lot of now, some people do fantastic on a carnivore diet. I mean, they have less pain, they have less inflammation. And that could be one is that they're cutting down on their carbs and their processed foods. And it doesn't make any sense in a lot of matters because of the fact of number one, you're not feeding your microbiome that well with it that we know of. So, but I've certainly had lots of patients come in the office that have musculoskeletal problems that do well on the carnivore diet. And what we started to recommend is that people try it for 14 days and see how they feel. And some people, we have a diabetic patient that is just thrilled with it. He says certainly gets a little bit bored at times, but he never gets bored of a good ribeye steak. Other people have talked about it, they have struggled even getting through 14 days of doing the carnivore diet because they get bored with it. But again, Ashley said the key things. What can you sustain and what makes you feel the best? And then we can look at lab markers and stuff like that and determine what is the best for you. So as we move on here, if you smoke, quit. If you can't quit, certainly you need to just work at reducing the number of cigarettes and increasing the time between the cigarettes. And that can make profound impacts on your health. So if you, we certainly recommend quitting, but if you can't quit, work towards reducing the number of cigarettes and you can work with some prescriptions, you can work with some, apps and things like that to help you quit. But certainly we would encourage that.
And I think we've had a lot of patients actually come into the clinic for assistance with stopping smoking because there's some things that you can offer with chiropractic care.
Yes, so acupuncture is very good for that. Balancing people with their stress hormones works well. So working with their adrenal glands, chiropractic care to help with stress and relaxation through that process too is very beneficial. So we want to end this talking a little bit about the blue zones. So every time we talk somewhere, we ask people, have you ever heard about the blue zones? And most often people say no. Well, several years ago, this picture shows in 2008 this was designed, and this is possibly when it would happen. But National Geographic went around the world looking for places where people live the longest and live the healthiest. And they circled that with a blue Sharpie, thus they became the blue zones. And as they went around the blue zones, there were different things in different areas that had things that were key about what made them different and what they made them special. And they came up with the power of nine and the things that are key to helping us with our longevity, but also with our health. We want to live longer, but we also want to live healthier. So it's not necessarily more years, it's more healthy years that we want to work on. So those nine things are number one, move naturally. People in the blue zones don't necessarily sit all day and go to the gym for a half hour, an hour, or something. They're moving all day. You need to have the right outlook. Know your purpose. And we talked about that in the stress management, how important purpose was, and also downshifting again with the stress presentation we did. So we're going to be doing the movement one next in our five pillars. So that hits number one, and number two and three we hit with the stress one. But I can't overemphasize the purpose of having your purpose and also downshifting. So today we talked a lot about eating wisely. So that's another one of the five pillars. So eating wisely, 80% rule. The 80% rule means stop eating when you're 80% full. People say, how do I know when I'm 80% full? Well, when you just start feeling that sensation, and you know when you just definitely get full or over full. So just start playing with that. Ashley talked about that slant of the diet. Eat more plants, eat more color in your diet. And again, the blue zones are going to tell you that what they found is the people that slant their diet more towards plants do much better. And then wine at 5. That's having a glass of wine at 5 o'clock. It's not 5 glasses of wine, it's a glass of wine. And there's a lot of mixed research out there when it comes to alcohol. I think we know for sure that 1 to 2 alcoholic drinks per week aren't going to cause any health problems. But the biggest issue with the wine at 5 is it's time to socialize. It's time to be with somebody else and do that. So that's why the wine at 5 is so beneficial um, in this, 9 powers through the blue zones. So again, that kind of falls back to our relationships and that which is also one of our five pillars. And then that rolls us into belong, again, relationships. Um, the key things with belonging is family first. Have a strong family, work with your family. Belong, be involved in church, be involved in volunteer organizations, be involved in many things. Super important to do that. And then the right tribe. Hang around the right people. Hang around people that are positive, that are going to make a positive impact on your life, and also people that you can make a positive impact on their life. Recently, there was a short video on Netflix. Ashley, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So Eric Dane is an actor. If anybody watched Grey's Anatomy, he had a leading role in that. He was also in some other movies, and he passed away just very recently due to ALS. And so he pre-recorded a video with Netflix to be released after he died. The intention was to record this to his daughters, but it's very important information, I think, that can just be relayed in general, which I believe is why he chose to put it on Netflix. And it's called My Last Words. So I would recommend that everybody watches it. It's just a 5 minute clip on Netflix. It might be a little longer, but they cut it down into 5 minutes. And there was three main points that he touched on, but two of the biggest ones. One was he started off by saying fall in love. And he said, not necessarily fall in love with somebody, but fall in love with something that you do. But certainly falling in love with somebody helps that a lot more too. And I think that with the belonging portion is huge because you need to fall in love with something that is what gets you out of bed every day, something that is a purpose for you, you're passionate about. And I think that that's a huge key that we all need to work on. He talked about how his acting was his passion and that I can't think of the exact terminology that he used with it, but essentially it never became a burden. He always had a lot of joy in going to his job and he always loved it and it always excited him. So find something that always excites you. And then he did also speak on behalf of friends and family and recognizing that friends and family are going to be the ones that are there for you in the good times and the bad. He has two daughters and he's not married, I believe. And he talked a lot about his friends and how when he was sick with ALS, he could not do the things that he used to do with his friends, but that didn't matter because his friends still showed up and they did other things. They found other things that they could do. But the important things was that his friends came. His friends came all the time. And he still spoke very highly of his ex wife, who was the mother of his children, and that he recognized that she was a huge part of his life and that she was a big impact on him as well. And so he feels that having the right friends and family and having a good passion are going to be two of the three big things that he wanted his daughters to live out even after he was gone.
Yeah, and then he talked a lot about just living today. You can't live in the future, you can't live in the past, you got to live every day. And I think there was actually four of them, so I don't remember what the other one was right offhand.
Yeah, I'm not exact, but then the other part of the reason why I even brought this up and shared with some people was because another individual that Wayne is very passionate about is Joseph Campbell, who talks about the hero's journey, which aligns with what this actor's message was of, recognizing that you are the hero of your own journey and you need to kind of live that out, and that sometimes that purpose isn't always just there for you, but through your life, through your trials, and triumphs, you find your purpose and your purpose finds you. And that's just a big part of living well is having a purpose.
So we encourage you to watch those two videos and start living the nine powers of the blue zones.
So, like Wayne said, get started today. Start increasing your good foods in your diet. Maybe don't fixate so much on cutting out chips or cutting out this. Focus on bringing some good things in. And then, if we need additional help with your nutrition or with any of the other pillars, please feel free to reach out to the office, contact us, and we'll get something set up and we can dive into whichever one of these is most important for you, but additionally all of the rest of the pillars as well.